Yeah, way back when psychedelics were all the rage. In fact, they were first synthesised in 1938, 80 years ago. Quite a way. They were used at some stage through, in medical treatments, but then obviously took off with Timothy Leary and Hunter S. Thompson and all those types. And from there, the reputation of psychedelics really took a downward turn. There were all kinds of crazy myths and rumours like that you could go blind if you took LSD and all kinds of other things. But now there is a renaissance in thinking about LSD, and maybe even it's in rehab itself. To tell us more, we're joined by Martin Williams. He's a research fellow in medical chemistry at Monash University and a president of PRISM, which is psychedelic research in science and medicine. Good morning, Martin.
G'day, Cassie. How are you doing?
I'm intrigued by this.
Aren't we all?
Now, when you think of a psychedelic kind of experience, people say popular culture kind of shows it as this crazy, far-out, amazing experience, and sometimes really connecting with nature and with each other. I mean, that's the good side of it. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up pretty well. They tell us that that psychedelic drugs, and psychedelic just means mind manifesting. That was actually a term coined by Aldous Huxley in correspondence, or it was actually with his correspondent who came up with that term. So the experience can be pretty discombobulating, they tell us. There can be profound changes in perception, in cognition, and in your mood and so on, but it can also perhaps give really profound insights into both oneself as well as what's going on in nature or in our environment around us. So I have heard of people going blind on LSD, but only temporarily as well.
I think that was a bit of a misnomer, the idea that people stared into the sun, but then and they went blind. But I think it was actually turned out to be a bit of propaganda by the
that's exactly right. There's been a lot of propaganda, Cassie. Basically, the psychedelics are pretty distinctive in that it's very, very rare for people to fully lose track of reality. So they will pretty much always be aware that they've taken a drug and that something's changing their perception. So it's quite rare for people to be so under the influence that they lose track. Although some people have been known to lose track temporarily with reality.
Yeah, and I guess there's a range of different reactions to any drug. The author, I was reading about this brand new book that's come out in the US by a guy called Michael Pollan on how to change your mind. Maybe you're familiar with it.
Absolutely.
But he's been experimenting a bit himself. And also getting the accounts from people who have taken LSD. And I just love this bit. It says, one of the people says, I became the music for a while. Somebody else says, I don't know why he's yellow and lives on my left shoulder, which is a classic kind of hallucination. And then Pollan himself, during one trip, was recorded saying that it suddenly dawned on him that these trees were obviously my parents.
Yep. And that's the kind of insight that people talk about, basically. I'm not sure that they actually believe that they're their parents, but they would say that a long, long, long time ago, those were sort of fundamental to where we are now. But the research that has brought this latest bit of, publicity to psychedelics is very interesting because it's a really nice piece of fundamental neuroscience research that's really got very interesting translational implications. So it's really cool. It's from California. It's a group that are working at a university that I studied at a number of years ago, actually, and they've been looking at how three classes of psychedelic drugs, so an amphetamine class, which is actually a psychedelic amphetamine, LSD, and a tryptamine, which is related to serotonin, basically, which is a natural neurotransmitter in our system. They have found that these drugs can actually promote neural plasticity or growth of neurons, which is really quite contrary to what a lot of people have been saying about psychedelics over the years. So these can actually promote regeneration of neurons in people who might be suffering depression because there are concerns about, or there's a hypothesis that a lot of these neuronal cells are actually cut back in depression. And so if we can regenerate these neurons, then it's possible that this might have an implication for depression, treatment of depression and other mood disorders such as anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Now, I guess, a lot of people will be thinking, oh, well, this guy's, from the research into it, from PRISM, you'd be pretty sort of positive about it. What about all those claims that people who take trips sometimes disturb psychiatric conditions that are underlying and they never really kind of recover from them?
Yeah, that's right. And you did hit the nail on the head. There has been a lot of propaganda over the years, and I think there's a lot of misinformation. But nobody in our group or in any of the research sort of organisations around the world are advocating uncontrolled use of psychedelics or any drugs. You're right in that it's possible that these drugs, which can have very profound effects on people's personalities in the longer term as well as just the very short term, they can uncover underlying psychosis and schizophrenia, and that's really something that needs to be kept in mind. And so in the therapeutic context, then people are very carefully screened to make sure that they don't have these underlying disorders. And the other thing is that these compounds are only administered once or twice in a clinical setting at modest doses with a lot of psychotherapeutic support. So they've got psychologists, psychiatrists nearby to help participants have them nearby to help them work through any issues that might be coming out. And quite often working through the issues is what psychotherapy is all about. So really these drugs are being advocated as an adjunct to effective psychotherapy rather than having the simple effects themselves.
So you'd be in a safe environment, in your tracky dacks, there'd be some nurses and doctors around, and you'd be a once or twice self-experience, and then you'd be changed.
It's a guided experience, usually with music. Music does seem to be quite important to reinforcing the experiences for people, as you mentioned before. Not always trippy music. It can be classical music. It can be the most profound experience that some people have had. And in fact, there may be a spiritual or a mystical element that really reinforces it for some people, particularly if they're facing distress associated with, say, terminal illness, something like that. So it's been found that psilocybin in magic mushrooms can have a profound positive effect on the outlook of people who are facing death.
Gee, okay. Well, there's lots to learn there.
Absolutely.
Martin, thanks for talking with us and opening the doors of our perception to a bit of this.
All the best. Thank you.
Very good. Martin Williams is a research fellow in medicinal chemistry at Monash and also president of PRISM, which is the Psychedelic Research in Science and Medicine Association. Interesting stuff, huh? It sort of feels like everything that's old is new again, but we really are learning more and more about psychoactive ingredients and also about conditions themselves, mental health conditions themselves.